Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friends of Figma. Today, we are all still kind of getting our heads around, but hoping to sort of communicate to everyone as well. This brand new update that you probably all heard about from Config, which is huge and has changed everyone's life. And I'm sure that you're all excited, but also very sad at the amount of work that you're going to have to do to change your Figma files. Just give yourself some time and don't try to do it all in one day would be my advice. Also, don't have to use everything. Like we're looking at the styling and we're figuring out whether we're really going to use all of it. But we're going to show you what we have found so far. We've split this up between Jamie, myself, and Olivia to kind of show you some of the new features that in real life that you might not have used yourself. And then on top of that, before we do any of that, Olivia is going to talk to us a bit about design systems, and she'll give you more detail into what she's going to talk about. She's got a very pretty looking presentation, and we'll probably run for like an hour, and then we'll just carry on afterwards talking rubbish. That's okay. Cool. How's your audio all good, Olivia? You got everything you need?
I believe so. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Parts of my presentation are interactive, so I'm gonna send you guys a link on the right hand side if you want to follow, and then I can do both. I can screen share, but you can also just obviously follow me on Figma. I'm sure you've all done that. If anyone hasn't, just let me know. Was everybody able to join? I'm just saying how many of you are there. Okay, people are still joining, I think. I see Sam just joined. Got Devin, Tandy, Nachana, Melissa, Joseph, Ivana. I think that's everybody. Anyone having trouble?
Nope.
Cool. So you can, I'm assuming everybody's relatively familiar with Figma, so you can click on my profile icon. It's like a sea and grass, and I'm wearing a red top and a black jacket. You can click on that and follow me. But for those who prefer to watch on Zoom, I'm also going to share my screen in case anybody's on the go. Everybody able to see that okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, all good.
Why is my bar here? You guys can see, but it's in the funniest place. Okay, there we go. Now it's moving. Okay. So, how to build a design system when you have no time, no money, and no hope. I'm Olivia. I have a TikTok account that has become sort of popular in the recent months, and I've been teaching Figma basics, really, mostly to beginners. I posted one video which got like 300,000 or 400,000 views, and it was very controversial because I said the best thing for designers, for junior designers to do is to work when they're, sorry, let me try that again. The best thing for junior designers to do when learning how to build a design system is to work from an existing design system. There's a lot of debate in the comments. I recommend you check it out because there's people saying some interesting stuff, but I thought I would give a talk about that and you can see if you agree or disagree with me, and if you want to follow this approach. So that's the lore, that's the backstory. Let's get stuck into it. I hate these bits of presentations because like I never follow, I never really understand fully what's coming up, and you just have to trust in like short little sentences to know what's going to happen. So I condensed it down for you. So a brief summary of what we're going to talk about is startups, danger, bingo, UI kits, scripts, and variables. So let's get started. Startups. If you work at a company where the CEO looks like this, the office looks like this, and the employees look like this, then you need to look like this. That's Storybook, and that is, of course, Figma. And that is because 80% of startups fail, according to Investopedia. There's a lot of different numbers. So what we're going to do at this stage, and I know it's very early into my talk, but we're going to play a bit of bingo. That's why I got you guys in here. And basically, everyone gets a bingo card. And what we're trying to answer here is, how might a design system bankrupt your business? So if everybody comes over here to the right-hand side, there's bingo cards. I did 4, so if everybody just wants to take a copy, I'm not sure if there's 8 of us. In fact, I will make copies for you guys. If everybody wants to take one, and then you have 4 of the bingo stickers. So I guess just copy and paste one of those for yourself and put your initial in it, so we know who's working on what. I think everybody has a bingo card, right? Yeah, feel free to change the colors, whatever you gotta do, and I will turn off my Slack notifications. There we go. Oh, Mitch's is like a blood red, dangerous.
It's just so that I can dark mode it. Oh,
Nice, nice, nice.
sorry, I've been doing this all day.
That's all good. Okay, so once you guys have copied your little stamp on your bingo card, put down 4 stamps on whichever, you know, we've all played bingo here, right? So whichever ones you think are true, take 4 copies of your stamp and put it down on 4 of the squares, and I will call them out in the next 2 minutes or so. Once I find them in my notebook, it would be good if I was prepared. I see people moving their stamps. Oh my goodness, someone made a gradient stamp. I love that for example. So you know the rules of bingo. First person to get it shouts bingo.
And in this context, bingo is get a line down.
No, just for anywhere. I mean, you only have
Okay.
4, so I guess it doesn't really work like bingo. I think, Mitch, you might know bingo a little bit better than I know bingo.
Oh no, well, I don't, I don't, to be honest. But 4 is a good rule, yeah.
I see one person. Oh, Mitch has placed 3, so he's still got 1 to go. I see Devin has placed a couple. I'm assuming everybody's just reading through them, so feel free to take your time.
So the question is, how might a design system
Bankrupt your business.
Right. Okay.
Yes, it might be good to give you guys a reminder of that, because I was talking pretty quickly. But yeah, in what ways can a design system make a business lose money? I love Jamie's surprise Pikachus. Oh, if they're going into the auto layouts, I think I maybe see one person struggling. You can do position absolute. If you open the right hand side bar, there's an icon.
Or you can just lock the entire artboard of the bingo card. That also helps.
Yes, you can do that as well. Would that help? I'll lock it for this person because I think maybe they're struggling. Is that any better?
I think we all got there, one way or another.
Yep, more or less. I see Joseph put down his 4th there now. Jamie, you can't do 5. You can't do 5.
I just realized. No. I pulled back before. I just realized
that you're cheating.
I don't know what's going on.
Okay, Shola has 1 left, so we'll wait on them. And I think Ivana is still going, so we'll give her a go. Nachana, you working away? Do you need me to lock your card? Because I can do that for you. Let's see. So let's take your thing out and lock your card for you. And you can try that again. I'll make you 3 stickers, if that is helpful. Here's me being presumptuous and assuming that everybody has used Figma. It's like when you work all day for 8 years as a designer, you start to think a certain way. Okay, one more, and then I can read out the answers. So just make sure to shout bingo if you've got bingo. I mean, there's only 4, so you don't get additional chances. Alrighty. Okay. So how might a design system bankrupt your business? Number 1, by being non-existent. Did people get that one? Did people get that one?
Yes.
Number 2, not following best practice design patterns. Number 3, not following accessibility guidelines. And number 4, having inconsistencies.
Bingo.
Did anybody get bingo?
Me.
Yay! There's no prizes.
Although I thought that this was actually going to be a trick question. I feel like having a design system doesn't really lose your company money.
Joseph has a question.
Other than being non-existent.
No, it was just bingo, like saying I got bingo and that was it.
Oh, you bingoed as well. Nice. Okay, 2 people. Let's go, guys. Yeah, it is a bit of a sneaky question. I was being a bit sneaky. That's just who I am. But let's get back to the presentation and I will explain why I think the things that I think. So if you guys, well, I'm screen sharing, so either you can watch my screen share. I will not get you to interact anymore because I know it can be a little bit stressful. Either you can go back to Zoom or feel free to follow me by clicking the icon on in the top bar. And let's get into it. So since it is so easy for design to basically send a whole company crashing down, how do we then make a design system which will empower the company? And this is my answer, by using existing UI libraries. So the reason I'd recommend using existing UI libraries is because they are tried and tested, they're made by experts, they are consistent, they normally have matching pre-built code components for the likes of React, Vue, and all the common languages. And in case you think they might get a little bit boring and every app looks the same, they are actually fully customizable. So here are 3 that I would recommend. I'm just realizing, maybe not everybody's a Figma user. So a UI kit is like all your little design components. It's like a sticker sheet that you just take the sticker and you put it in your file. So here are some good ones. Material UI, they are their own company, but they follow Google's guidelines. So it's very similar to Google's design system. There is Flowbyte that is built to correspond with Tailwind, which is like a way of writing your CSS. Some companies use that, so it can be really, really handy. And there's Untitled UI. It doesn't have like a code equivalent, but it is very, very good and is still suitable to a lot of scenarios because I've worked many jobs where there's already components which have been built. So by using Untitled, you get the biggest range of different components. It's really, really fantastic. I only learned about it a couple months back, so I'd recommend you guys check it out. So then how do we make a UI kit customizable? How do we make it funky? How do we make it ours? And we do that by importing and extending it. So the way you do that in 6 short steps, which we will dig into after this slide, is number 1, you copy the variants into your new design system. You wrap each component in an auto layout. You name each new auto layout after its child properties, and then you combine all those variants into a new component, make your overrides, and then you hit publish. That might seem like a lot of words, but I shall demonstrate and hopefully you guys can follow. So copying variants into your new design system. Say you're using Flowbyte for this example. That's what I've been doing for the past couple months, so I'll stick with Flowbyte. Here is their accordion. So rather than copying the whole component into your new design system, because then you're just starting from scratch, right? That's kind of pointless and you can't share it out again, but you want to take a copy and you want to override it. So the way we do that is we select everything inside and we copy paste it as instances of this component. And you end up with something like this, well, behind the plugin windows. So we copy all of those variants, those instances, into our new design system. And now what we want to do is we wrap each one of them in an auto layout. And that gives us like another layer of customizability. So what we want to use to do that is a plugin called Automator with an E, not an O. That's the popular one made by Diagram. This is a whole other thing. And all you do is select all of your instances. You go Object, add auto layer each, and you will have an auto layer around every instance. Awesome, because now it's kind of like your own component. So this is the tricky bit, and I had to get a dev involved here, which is why I think it's exciting that I'm talking to you guys about it, because I'm giving away the script. And basically what this script does is it allows us to hold on to all our variants. So it takes the names of all the properties of the child inside the auto layout and names the parent layer after the properties. And that means you have like all your Boolean values, all your drop downs and everything. But now it's inside your design system and you're no longer relying on those from Flowby. The next thing we want to do is combine all of these into a new component. So, well, going back to my last point, you can see here, they're named as you would name your variants in Figma. Now we select them all and we create a component set. And that is how you create your own component, which you can then apply overrides to. So here's an example of what you might do. Of course, there are some constraints. Normally it's do auto layouts, but then you can go back to your Flowby file and change things there and publish that out again and make your changes. So here I've just changed the colors around a little bit. I've made this yellow. You can't really see, but I got rid of the rounded corners. So whatever override you need to do, you can make those. And as you can see, all the original variants remain, but now you have your own fully customizable component. Hopefully everybody was able to follow that, but I will share the slides with you so you can try it out for yourself. And at this stage, your company is probably promoting you through the roof. They're so happy with you. But it gets better. It gets even better because Figma just released variables. And with variables, you can make the best design system ever created. So now I'm going to go into a bit of a demo. I used GIFs from Sonic and Dragon Ball Z in this presentation. It wasn't intentional. It's just what allowed me to get my point across the best. So I shall use those in my demo to show you guys the variables. And that's how we move into the new feature drop section of this talk. So say you are an agency which makes websites for game developers and you've got Sonic coming to you and you have Dragon Ball Z coming to you. You want to use one template for both of those companies to speed yourself up. So what you would have had to do in the past is make two design systems, right? And then apply everything to your template. But now with variables, you just make variables all in one place and you can apply them so quickly. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to want to make over here. I'm going to have to move your little window. This is the kind of thing we want to make. This is a very simple example of a button. So we make one button, but actually with our variables, we can make these two very different buttons based on this one button component. So here's my Sonic branding. You can see that's kind of what their website looks like. And then this is my Dragon Ball Z button. So let's open up the variables panel and I will show you how I made that. I made the button and then I can't zoom in, so I hope people can see I'm on a pretty big screen. But I made a button background color and then I applied the blue from the Sonic website. And I applied the yellow for the Dragon Ball Z variation. You can make as many variations as you want. I think these are called, what are these called? Modes. So you can make as many of these as you like, and you can create your variables down here. So you have a choice from color, number, string, and Boolean. And you can style them and use them for whatever you like. So a pretty cool one is the text, because I was able to apply that in here. So you just do it using this little icon. Again, this is probably tiny for most people, but there is a sort of hexagon icon, and you just click on that, and then you're able to choose the variable that you want to apply. And then I have the two strings here. So the Sonic website, I don't think it's in the screenshot, but their buttons say add to cart, whereas Dragon Ball Z say buy now. And you're able to automatically apply that text. And what is even cooler is that you can apply one of these modes that we just talked about to an entire frame. So again, very rudimentary example, but if you make all your UIs for the Sonic app, all you have to do is take an instance of this, whoop, and we drag it in here. It's got the Sonic branding because I set this layer to have the Sonic branding. And then if we drag it into here, it automatically has the Dragon Ball Z branding because that is set to Dragon Ball Z. So that is a very short introduction to variables. I hope you can see how powerful it is. Give it a go. If you want to chat to me, do chat to me. I'll go back to my slides to show you where you can chat to me. That is my TikTok name. Feel free to slide in my DMs, watch any videos, leave any comments that you like. I answer questions on there pretty frequently, so if I can help you out with anything, do let me know. And with that, I think I'll pass over to Jimmy. Are we taking questions now or questions at the end? I'm not sure that.
We've got one question from Sam. Are you detaching the main component from the Flowbyte library at any point?
Can you or should you?
Are you?
Sorry, Mitch, I don't know what you said.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It just like went muffly at the very end where you told me a piece of information that I needed to know.
Are you detaching the main component from the Flowbyte library at any point?
No, I'm not. So that's the whole point, because I'm keeping one core design system. I have this somewhere in my work files. I can send it in later. But basically, we have the one core design system, which is Flowbyte. And if I don't like a component from Flowbyte, then I just change that component. For example, I was working on a nav and I just wanted like a profile icon and then a text saying log out, but there was no divider between them. So I wanted the divider. So instead of detaching and making that change in one of my sub-design system, my product-specific design systems, which I have 3 product-specific, and then I have Flowbyte that sits at the top of them. Instead of making that change by detaching and doing it in one of the product design systems, I make it in the top level in Flowbyte, and then that means all the other design systems inherit that change. If there's something very specific to one of our products, where a component needs to look completely different and I don't want it to pull from the Flowbyte, then I will detach it. But to be honest, we've actually not come across that by hiding stuff and kind of messing about and hacking things a little bit. We've managed to keep all of our components instances attached to Flowbyte. Is there any other questions? I can see so much text here, but I didn't read through it properly at the time. Note about modes from Sam. Modes are available on paid plans only. I'm on the education plan. You get 4 modes. Oh, interesting. And for enterprise, you get 4. Oh my goodness, for enterprise.
Yeah, this one's baffling
modes.
to me. This is actually like, I'm hoping they change it. I think I've been repeating myself on social media over and over, mentioning Figma, hoping they listen. That like 4 is not enough for a lot of serious projects, and not many of us have the privilege of being on an enterprise plan either. So I'm hoping, because if they expand it, like there's white label products that I work with, that would be so nice. We could have all the brands and modes, and I can just go bum bum bum, including strings and everything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the way that they sort of demoed it, it sounded as though they wanted you to do like a dark mode, a light mode, summer, autumn, spring, winter, 20
Right.
other things. And that's kind of a common thread with the new features. So I have a team plan at work, and then a free plan for whatever else I'm doing, right? If I'm making YouTube videos or whatever else. On the free plan, pretty much everything that's new is sort of not available on free. They're kind of saying, it's almost like they've said, as of this year, we're not working for free anymore, which I can understand to some extent, but also, yeah, it bites a little bit.
Thanks,
But,
Adobe.
yeah, someone's got to pay for that 20 billion, right? That doesn't come from nowhere. So, yeah.
That's why you hide your personal files in an unnamed, unmarked work file on your work profile, Mitch.
I would never do, I would never do such a thing.
Don't lie.
Unfortunately. No one looks at, no, don't worry. The other thing that actually we'll talk about that when we get to dev mode, but a big part of what they're doing is they're trying to get developers into the Figma space as well. But before we get to that, any other questions for Olivia? And thank you, Olivia. That was excellent.
You're so welcome. I hope it didn't go over anybody's head, because I know I confused some of the juniors at my work with it to begin. So hopefully I'm explaining it a little bit better now.
Can we use variables in multiple Figma files? No?
I don't know. I don't know. Does anyone know? I've not done it yet.
I think if for example, let's say there's a, I don't know, a community file. I think variables will be referenced to that community file like styles are, and I could be wrong because there really hasn't been a lot of time to experiment with this heavily. But I think if, say, a component is ported, either it references the variables from the source file, or worst case for the likes of, I think, colors that are variables, if they can't be referenced successfully, they're deprecated to styles. So yeah, it was one I was thinking about as well, but it just hasn't been a lot of time to dig into so much, you know, that's come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, the same way you can publish components or styles, you can publish variables. So that's a way you can use those same variables across multiple files. I've been doing a bit of experimenting with publishing and then deleting variables, and what happens to those source files. And there's quite a few bugs with it right now.
Yeah.
When you delete a variable in the source file, it stays linked somehow in the other one, and there's some weird stuff going on there. But yeah, you can use them across multiple files that way.
Yeah, I think Figma's been really buggy for the past couple of weeks, to be honest, even with styles. It's something that I've noticed since it got taken over by Adobe. So there's that.
Sad day that.
Shall we let Jamie kick off with all his fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I won't have a lot of time to go into prototyping in depth. So I'm really going to focus on one way that you might use variables and some of the new prototyping features to simplify your prototype. So I guess I wanted to start off kind of almost in a lamenting like the joy of like extremely complex prototypes that still don't do what you want. So these are just some outlines of prototypes I've created in the past where like basically you spend so much time creating all these complex networks of pseudo conditions, and even then by the end of it there's still a feeling of it being not quite interactive. So here's a great example. So for something like a multi-select filter, where you've got you simply want someone in a prototype to be able to select a few options in this filter, click apply, and something happens. But even in the component itself in the past, you had to create all these possible states, essentially snapshots of every single permutation that there could be. And even then, that wasn't a great help because you couldn't really control the output in any meaningful way unless you wanted to create like every possible result. So I think this has been a major pain point for a lot of people. I mean, I had a senior stakeholder once referred to Figma as like, it's a bit of a PowerPointy kind of thing, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah. that's where we were at. Now, things have changed, and the updates have been huge regarding interactivity and prototypes. So we can take something like this complex component, which has like so many permutations, to a single component that will effectively carry what you input into it as a state that will potentially carry on to any screens that you link to afterwards. So as I said, I'll go through this one example. I'm still learning how this all works. It is quite deep. But in this case, I've somehow managed to take all this information and place it into the single component, and it is just a component. So how I've done this is, if I click prototype, in the past, you would have seen something akin to this, right? Where you've got all these noodles everywhere, or spaghetti, whatever you want to call them. This has interactivity going on right now, but you just can't see it necessarily. And how I went about doing this was, before I jumped into actually, I guess, programming this component, I wrote down on a piece of paper what I expect to happen, much like you would do before writing a piece of code, right? And this is something that designers will have to start getting into, right? A bit of logic, thinking practically, like how we do this. And so the goal I'm trying to achieve here is, okay, these are sets of radio buttons. These are single select regions. I want, when I select one of these should not be selected. And in the past, we'd make 4 permutations of this single piece, right? Now we don't have to do that. And then in this case, I've got checkboxes, which suggests a multi-select. So I want to be able to toggle these on and off when I select them, and I want to be able to combine them in any combination I want. And this, again, I don't need to make like a whole complex state of individual snapshots of these states. So you won't see any prototype markers here. But if I click into these individual selections, so these radio buttons and checkboxes are components, you'll see that I do have an interaction up here that says click set variable. So there's 2 things that have changed with prototype interactions. One is that now I have my on click or my trigger up here, and I have this plus button, and then I have this sort of list of interactions that's going on. So you can now stack interactions, and there's a lot of cases that don't involve conditions or variables where this is really useful. Like you wanted an action to happen and then something else to happen at the same time you click that action. I'm not going to go into that specifically, but I suggest you play around with possibilities there. I really want to focus on the interactivity and conditional logic. So here I have at the top level, the collapsed level, you can see, probably should preface by saying I did do a bit of work beforehand here regarding setting all these variables. Let me rewind for a second. First, I went into my variables list and I basically set a variable for each of these options. And because these only have 2 states, they can be on or off, I set a Boolean variable. If I wanted to control, say, the string here or the text layer, I would set a text variable. If I wanted to control something like price or a numeric value, I'd set a numeric value. But in this case, I set Boolean. So there was a little bit of work setting this up beforehand. I find you get into a groove with it when you start working with it for a while. But essentially, yes, these are all mapped to a variable and they're all set to false. And there's a little bit of logic going on here as well, which I'll explain afterwards. And then what I did was to actually map those variables to these components. I selected each component, and where we have this true or false state, because these components are either true or false, there's this little variable icon saying assign variable. And so I went into that for each one, and I went length, any. And now that's tracking, that variable's tracking this component, or the other way around. So already, I'm throwing a lot at you right now. And if you haven't been playing around with variables or conditional logic too much, don't worry. I think you get it more instinctively when you start practicing it yourself. But essentially, just to recap, there's 3 steps. Set your variables, assign your variables to your things, and then go into prototyping and make things do stuff when you click on them or you drag them or whatever. So on each one of these, I have an interaction saying on click, I want to do something. I want to do 4 things actually. I want to set this guy to true and these guys to false. And the reason I do that for each one is that in the prototype itself, and I'll actually open this briefly to show you. If you think about it logically, every time I click something in this set, I want one of them to be true and the others to be false. And that gives us that single selection logic. And I have the same thing repeated for here. And then in the case of the checkboxes, I have a conditional. So basically, how I figured this logic out was, okay, how does a checkbox work? Well, a checkbox works in the sense that if it's on, I want it to switch off. If it's off, I want it to switch on. That's how I figured that logic. So I used a conditional for that. So if this particular checkbox is true, set it to false. Otherwise, set it to true. And that way I got the logic for these checkboxes. So you can see I can switch them on and off, and I didn't have to do any additional variants for this. So I set all of these selections and to view something, and that thing is this component here. So this is just for selecting an imaginary set of phone plans. And within each of these phone plans, I set another set of variables. So if we go into the logic, I use animals here just to help me keep a track of them. I basically have another Boolean saying show dog, show cat, show fish, show snake, etc. And I also have a state where I don't want anything to show, no results. And so I somehow want this to link to different outputs. So it's essentially a search component or a filter component. So how I worked it, and I don't know if this is the best way or not, because I'm still figuring this out, was I wanted 2 things. So this reset button will switch all of these switches off. So if I click, for example, if I have a bunch of these selected, I want that reset button to scan through all of these and knock them off. So that works just perfect. And then for the apply button, now I don't know if I figured out the best way to do this. I'm not a programmer by nature. I'm still figuring this out. I thought, how do I want this apply button to work? Well, I wanted to basically check what I have selected. And if that selection matches parameters here, I want one of these to show or many of these to show. And so how I did it was from the point of view of, let me open that. I set a few conditions here. I didn't capture every single state. And I think I was halfway through this when I started to realize maybe I should have thought about it the other way around. But how I went about this was, if any length is set to true, show the dog, cat, fish, snake, and etc. If over 7 days is true, then just show the ones that have over 7 days. If over 30 is true, just show those ones. And then there's one where there are no results. So I just said, if this one is selected, don't show anything, show no results. And so from that, if I select any and I click apply, it shows all the results. If I select 7 and apply, it shows these. And because they're in a flex wrap or an auto layout wrap, they'll automatically align themselves. And then if I select one that doesn't have any results, I get a no results, because it's because the no results toggle is set to true if it doesn't find anything. So I did the same for the checkboxes. Now I didn't plan on this happening, but what was really cool was when I selected one of these checkboxes, it said to show these true, but because checkboxes are additive, without having to actually program for different combinations, if I select both of these, it will show both sets. It will show Digiphone and Telecom Éireann. Oh, it shows Aircell as well, but maybe I made a mistake in the logic. But oh, this must have been assigned to this one. But anyway, as you can see, things get complex really fast, right? But at least the complexity is happening in one space. And I think that's one of the great advantages of something like this kind of interactivity, right? Where you've got lots going on inside versus this kind of interactivity where it's basically untenable and doesn't carry to any other screens. So I don't have much more time to like dig into this. If you want to have a chat with me about it, I'm usually on the Friends of Figma Slack, or you can catch me on Twitter at 9jamie_. I'm still learning about this. But I do think this is very powerful and very promising. And I'm hoping that over time, Figma expand on this and refine this, because this can lead to the likes of prototypes where someone can log in and you can set their state as logged in, and then someone picks like a certain product, and then on every screen you can populate that screen with that product they selected without having to create like 100,000 screens. So if you have any specific questions about this kind of interactivity or prototyping, I'm happy to take them now, and we can have a quick discussion about it. Have any of you played with this yet? Oh, thank you.
There was one use case that one of my colleagues was working on, the checkout, and it was really interesting because he was just like adding, you know, the shopping cart items, like the quantity was varying the price that you'd see, you know, and then you'd apply a discount and then you see the percentage taken off because you could configure that as well. So I was just thinking, wow, what a great use case, you know, of showing an actual cart in action and the checkout. So it'd be great to like if all of us share our use cases, you know, in the Slack channel, because there's a lot to uncover.
There really is. Yeah, like I was actually just working on a prototype for a client where we're working on a voucher feature where you can apply a voucher. And so there's, without like in the past to do that, I would have had to make one very specific path where they are forced to select a certain thing and the outcome is forced. And I also have to create like 60 screens just to show like all the permutations. And now it's like the voucher applies a discount, which takes away from the total. And if the total becomes 0, then I can set another flag, which basically says, you don't have to do anything now. You can just continue to the checkout. And it's like, it's the more you work with it, I think at the start, it's very intimidating. And you're just thinking, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. Like, the more you work with it, the more you realize, okay, there's a bit more, the work is more front loaded. You have to think a little at the start, and you maybe have to do a bit of pen and paper planning. But then you have a prototype that, short of entering text into inputs, is as close to the implementation as possible. And I think the point of using Figma as a tool for that is that you don't end up using developers' time to work a prototype that has more interactivity. You don't have to set up an environment. You can, if you get good at doing this, and I think people will get good at doing this, you can quickly stand up more realistic prototypes that lead to conversations about edge cases and more interesting outcomes than basically click-throughs, you know? Like it's really powerful. Like I feel like I haven't scratched the surface. In the goodie bag at the end, I did link to a Flappy Bird prototype that actually works, which is like insane. And someone created, or I think oh, maybe I also linked a thing that runs C code in Figma, which is just like, yeah, it's I think people are still like scratching the surface of what this is, you know.
I was just wondering as well, because I was thinking of like an interesting use case as well for, although I haven't tried experimenting with it yet, tables and filtering. So just like to bring up the most boring topic of all of them now, but yeah, just thinking in terms of like if you had, let's say you have a column of results, and to the left of that, you have a column of categories. So each of the results belong to a category. So you might have 3 results out of 10 that belong to one category. So I'm just wondering, could you use these, I don't know, these stacked variants to like apply a filter in a prototype so that it filters just the results for one specific category?
Yes. So I think when I started work in that filter component, I think when I started working on the output, it started to dawn on me as someone who hadn't like ever programmed a filter before that I was focused on using that apply button to set all these conditions. And actually, I think what makes more sense and what would work in in your case, and probably in general better, is if somehow we could assign properties or some kind of tags to each table item, where maybe it says like, I'm still figuring out how exactly it would work, but I guess each table item would have maybe it's this and it's this and it's this, and maybe the apply button will just do some kind of matching where it's like, if this equals this and this equals that, then output. You see, the one thing that's missing, I guess, is we can't run loops. So in code, you would just iteratively repeat a function over and over again and go through a list. I'm still trying to figure out, I may not be the right person to figure this problem out versus more a developer, right? But I think there's definitely a way to do this, and I'm trying to refine, like, I actually love to make a community component that did something like this at a basic level. But I think it's like trying to figure out how do you match the filter with the output, and how can you assign properties to each item in a way that is meaningful. It's a tricky one, I guess.
It's one that has to be played around with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because we're missing loops. You see, I think that's when the penny dropped when I was working on that yesterday. And I was like, damn, like this is where I would have used a loop to like check each item for these properties. Look, someone out there has already figured this out. Like,
Maybe
I'm
that's the
convinced.
next thing they're gonna come up with. It's like loops announcement.
I was about to
I'd
say
be-
that'll be
I'd
the
be
next
all for
paywall
that.
item.
I'm all for that. I'm at this stage, I'm like, okay, if Figma wants to go down this way, then like, yes, the blocks option is a nice no code starter. But now I'm like, I just want to like have a JavaScript-esque like console window. I almost wanted to like just go into the inspect panel and see could I just like brute force it somehow, but I don't know how it's set up in the back end. I appreciate that this is bringing designers closer to thinking in terms of logic. I think this is quite important because too often designers produce outputs that are not quite connected to realistic scenarios, and not many designers have been using tools like Axure, which already has a lot of this functionality. I really want us to get to an Axure level, like have the community and ease of use and cloudness of Figma and the power of Axure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Axure was amazing at this. I haven't used it for years, but that was my first foray into prototyping.
Yeah,
It's very
and
detailed.
Axure has data sets and things that like I actually really want now. Now like I don't like now that I've actually dived into this a bit. Now it's like, how do I work fast? Like, how do I get this done like really fast? And then plugins will facilitate a little bit of that. I think I've seen a sheets of variables plugin that will supercharge some of the setup, where you can just like work in a table format and just quickly input all your conditions. But I want more now. Just give me more. Give me a text input. God damn it.
Yeah, the last time the last time I worked on Axure was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years, and we were finally in a position where we could actually pull data from a Google Sheet, including images. So you would have a set of cards, and the images would be pulled from that Google Sheet, which is huge because it means that someone else can go and develop that dummy data, or a developer can come in and sort of add in his own dummy data. But yeah, I'm a little worried about what the interface would look like if we had everything that Axure does. But I do like the idea of some kind of scripting language, the way that Axure has, where you can write equals.
I mean, what Figma's done reminds me a lot of a really fun programming. I don't know if you could call it a language, but a framework called, I think it's called Scratch. It's an MIT project to get younger kids to start coding. And Scratch had a really ingenious system where it had these jigsaw pieces. So you could do basic logic, including loops, but you could only fit certain pieces into each other. So you couldn't make illegal expressions. And I see Figma's done something a bit like Scratch. I'd actually, if they're going to go down that route, I'd like Figma to include like some more Scratch-esque elements, because Scratch will let you do for loops, if else, all this stuff, you know, all the basic blocks of a programming language. But we have to remind ourselves that like the point of doing it in Figma is it's the blueprint, the solution, and you know, not to get too lost in every single detail. So I think Figma is definitely giving us more realistic interactivity. Like I'm very excited to have prototypes which let people select more than the one option that they must select on a page, or you know, the one thing that they must select, because I just can't like program every single thing. We can now have some more customization.
Yeah, I think it's gotten to the level where we're almost having to decide whether our file is going to be a prototype file or a development ready file, because if you try to do both, you're gonna
Oh yeah,
die.
what
You're
you
gonna
don't
be
do
in a
them, you
bad
don't do
place.
them separately. That's an interesting discussion, actually. I've always
Well-
done my prototype file, my spec file separately, because I've always been scared of.
Insane.
I don't know.
It-
It's
it
like makes me
depends.
nervous.
It depends on the complexity. I mean, the thing I'm going to show you now, it's one file that does both, but it's a very, very simple project. If it were more complex, I would be worried, mostly because, you know, you don't want to confuse your devs too much. They might see something and go, oh, I guess I have to make that. Okay.
Mitch, the devs I work with are spoiled.
I know they
They're
are.
spoiled with
'Cause
me.
you're a
Like,
very good
I'm
designer.
hyper attentive. But I love having that relationship. So I get brownie points to ask for things that aren't necessarily on the Jira board.
No, Devin and I have got like at least 20 devs to take care of across. I don't even know how many projects
damn.
we have at this point. Yeah, we have too many devs to give each of them pets every day. We have to spend our time. Let me do my thing, and then we can get back into the discussion, because I promise no one will have questions about mine. I took the most boring part.
I think yours is the most exciting part, because the least amount of us will have seen what you're about to show.
I don't know. Let me get organized and open Figma. Actually, that's probably a good start. Okay, desktop 2. I'm going to show you my whole desktop. That's a good idea. Hey, it's a good idea. Yeah. Okay. So welcome to my desktop. This file is not perfect. I've used Flowbyte for this project. I'm going to show you the project, and then I'm going to show you some things I found in dev mode that really excite me. And the reason that they should excite you, and why I have the most exciting part actually, is this is a great opportunity to show the people in your company that you can influence not just design, but development as well, and add to how they optimize their workflow and make everyone's life just a whole lot better. So this is Orion. Orion is an open source SNMP simulator, which it's basically a very fancy acronym, which I can't recall, that basically it's basically a system for creating virtual machines. So you can build out a whole virtual network to test different software on one machine, which developers are very excited about. I mean, for us, it doesn't really mean that much. It's a fairly simple proposition, really. It's essentially just a table. It's got light mode and dark mode. It's got a table view and a card view. And you can add in a device. And I haven't done anything fancy like Jamie or Olivia have done with any of the new features on this thing. But that's basically what the product is. Now, this whole thing was made with Flowbyte, and we didn't even have to change that much. Their blue is almost exactly the same as ours. And in fact, they're using the same base font, which is Enter. So we were very, very lucky in our selection. Now, this project is an open source project. In other words, this isn't something that anyone is paying us to do. Sonolect does open source projects all the time, just to add to the community, especially for developers. We like to add to the developer community in that way. With that in mind, whenever a developer is coming in or going out, it creates a disruption in the project, right? And so we are in a position where we want to be very careful about documenting everything, so it's very easy for someone to come in, take over, make something very quickly, and then when he gets a project 2 days from now, you can just sort of move on, right? So with that in mind, let's have a look at dev mode. So how to get there? Okay, it's easy to get to dev mode. You go right here, and if you share, you can share a dev link. So that's going to be different to your normal Figma link. Now, dev mode is free for the rest of the year. So we've been told they are planning to do a sort of dev account, which will be cheaper than a design account. But their logic is, and when I say they, I mean Figma, their logic is, 30% of our users are developers. Now, is that fair or not? Are developers really users, or are they just sort of having to use Figma in order to get to what they need to get to? I think that's a bit sort of debatable. But nevertheless, they are trying to get developers to spend more time interacting with Figma. So let's have a look at dev mode quickly. The first thing you'll notice is that all the chaos of my pages disappears. And instead, what you get is just the ready for dev pages. Now I've gotten everything ready for dev, which really doesn't help my demo, does it? Let me just unready for dev all of these things so that I can show you properly. My developer is going to scream in the morning, but it's okay. I'll talk to him. Okay, so you've just got this item here ready for dev. That means it's the first thing that you're going to see on the left-hand panel. Now, some developers might not have worked in Figma before. They might not know how to sort of scroll up and down and left and right. They don't have a magic mouse. They might not have a trackpad because they're working on a PC. So just zooming around could be complicated. So they've made it very easy. If you just click these things, you can go into it'll sort of zoom you to that area, which is great. Now, let me go back to my notes here. Moving around, I've done that. New options for code. So the first thing is, because Flowbyte is Tailwind, you may decide that you're going to use Tailwind's scaling system very strictly, okay? And if that's the case, what you can do is you can change your units to rem. And I mean, lots of other frameworks and libraries use rem. But if they don't want to hear about pixels, they just want to hear about rem, they can now do so. They can see everything in rem. If you are making an iOS app, you can absolutely do that. You can use Swift UI or UIKit, Android, Compose, or XML. And there's a couple of other plugins that can also sort of convert your language for you. But let's assume we're using CSS and pixels for the time being. Now, I was naughty. I did something that I should not have done, which is I changed this after I said it was ready for dev. And my developer is confused because he knows something has changed, but he doesn't know what. And now he must go on this epic investigation, which leads me to the next thing that Figma did with this update, which is a lot of the features are not actually new. They're just exposed better. So in your Figma file here, you should see, if you're not in dev mode, you should see your, why am I blanking on how to get here? Show version history. You can go to show version history, see the version, and then go and figure out what the difference is manually. In dev mode, what they've done is they have a function called compare changes. You click compare changes, And once it takes a while to load, because I've changed it quite a few times, it gives you a side-by-side view of the old version and the new version. And let me just go back in time a little bit here, so that I can see when last I changed this. There we go. Okay, so on the old version, you can see all of these changes. So I've added the text device dark. This input field was edited. This frame was edited. This button was edited. I mean, that's the biggest changes. I went from the standard add device, which is just a copy of that, and I changed some things, to actually changing the name of it to cancel. And I removed this input field that says netmask. Now, having that kind of clarity will really help developers not want to stab you in your sleep. So that's a very, very good thing. So yay for compare changes. Docs and resources. So this is one of my favorites. So in a previous project, what I had done was I made a little component, which was like a little, it's like a little note thing. And one of my files is just chaos with these notes, right? So you've got 10 different Jira tickets associated with this one page, and you've got about 50 notes. You know, if this happens, show this. Here's a version for if there's an error, etc., etc. In dev mode now, what you can do is you can add in notes directly onto the any frame component, whatever it is, right? So what we've done is we've used the Jira integration to add in an issue. So we have an issue, SNMP12, that is associated with add device dark. And if you go to our Jira, you'll see that there's a link back to this. And so it's a lot easier because from a dev perspective, Jira is home, Jira is life, Jira is love, whereas we think of Jira as, most of us, I think of Jira as, no, we don't think of Jira. So yeah, that's a really good thing. Then plugins. Is that everything? Docs, resources, plugins. Plugins. Okay, so I've tried a couple of them. There's some really interesting ones. Anima, if you've used the prototyping tool Anima, it's incredibly powerful. You can Figma to React and HTML to bring it into Anima. There's quite a few sort of auto HTML tools, which are quite interesting. I can't speak to the quality of their code, but they certainly output something that looks convincing. I'm not sure if I would throw in an SVG like that necessarily, but sure, you could potentially do that. And it gives you all of your styles, and this is using Vue and Tailwind, so it should give me, yes, should give me a list of colors with names so that they can use green-200 instead of that specific color hex code, which is great. And there's all sorts of plugins that they could potentially use, all different reasons that you should definitely buy your entire dev team Figma licenses, right? But what if you say, well, my dev team doesn't really like Figma. We work in VS Code and we don't really care to learn Figma, but we still need to use Figma. Well, that's the last piece I'll talk about, which is the VS Code plugin. Really, really cool. So this is the VS Code plugin. You sign in with your Figma, you add in the plugin, you sign in with your Figma account, and you can go to any of the pages in your Figma account, in your Figma file. Then if you select an object, it does something quite, what I thought was quite magical. Some of the developers I talked to said, well, we've just copied it from here, so it's not really a big deal. But this was shown as quite a big deal in config. If you start creating a new class, so you go, actually, if you just press dot, because I have selected this dot, which is called just a little blue dot. If I select this dot, it's going to auto-complete that name. And then if I open my brackets, now I did it again. I promised myself I would have the correct keyboard for this, and I would remember the, yeah. If I press Control, and in my case, on my keyboard, it's Control Function space, you would get autocomplete options. So you can add all styling from the selected Figma layer, right? So you can imagine if you're doing this 200 times for 200 different components, it's a real lifesaver, right? So there's quite a few other things that you can do with this. You can really dig into it and see the different options here, but it's from a contextual point of view, it's really nice to basically say to your dev team, you don't even need to open Figma. You can literally just open VS Code. The Figma's right there. You can copy whatever you want. You can export from here. You can do whatever you want, and it's all there for you, and you're welcome. So yeah, that's it. I don't know how much I know about this. I feel like I don't know enough to answer any questions, but you can ask them anyway. The
Awesome.
style inheritance is awesome. I don't know if that was for me.
It is. I think that's such a nice feature. I mean, the amount of times I've had to write out, like, particularly for typography, write out all the properties, you know, or go into inspect and copy and paste and hope they get adopted. I think by making it basically effortless and not almost not having to communicate explicitly these things, I think it's, if it gets used properly by developers, it takes a lot of that awkward miscommunication out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that, you know, we don't see this as an opportunity to go into the detail, because you can really get lost in the detail here. You can sort of really get lost in, am I naming all my files correctly? Have I created a system for naming my files correctly, etc. Instead of thinking about it like that, it's worth thinking about it as, this is automating and optimizing my workflow such that I can justify having more time to do things like user testing, talking to stakeholders, you know, investing in the discovery problem space of a project, rather than just talking about pretty pictures, right? That should be our end goal here. Like find ways to utilize these automations and optimizations such that we can spend more time on the problem. That would be my hope.
Yeah, it's really cool that they've given developers plugins, because plugins were something that typically was reserved for designers, or you know, it was just not something we ever really shared with developers. And it's really nice that they've opened that up so the developers can they can choose their own adventure. Basically, they can use whatever they want. It's there for them if they want to use it. I haven't actually communicated dev mode much with the developers. I don't know like how they feel about it or the adoption of it, because as I told you, Mitch, like I literally the week before the announcement, I did an 1.5-hour workshop how to use Figma. And this is kind of like, oh God, it's all different. But I think it's really good. It's a good step forward. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year with dev mode pricing and things like this. I think that's going to be an interesting year in terms of the seats, because right now it's like you can be a viewer and still use dev mode.
Absolutely.
So that'll be a challenge when it comes along. But you know, I think they're still testing the water with pricing models and features. It is beta still.
Devin says
I don't know
Murphy's
if it's
Law.
just, yeah, like I don't know if it's just me, but the developers that I've worked with in the past have not been super interested in using Figma at all. You know, besides getting a hex code or looking at a basic layout, you know, that they almost look at it as the guide, and then they build the things, which I'm probably oversimplifying it, but I think part of the problem is that I've probably never given them the files in quite the correct way, because they've often struggled with, you know, multiple components being grouped, you know, in kind of weird ways. They struggle to get down to the base element of a thing, and they sort of hate that. And I think the other thing is, besides looking at it, which I think they see value, it's just another system that they have to use. I think it's kind of like the way that we feel about Jira, like can't be asked to use Jira. It's such a pain. I think that they see Figma the same way, but that's only my experience. I'd hate to put another system onto the designers unless it was going to be the silver bullet. but time will tell.
For sure, for sure. I worry about them. I worry about adding something to their workflow, which is why I think having a sort of an integration with VS Code would probably be more in line with, like, if I had a Jira integration in Figma, I would be a lot happier using, making tickets and, keeping them up to date. Perhaps I'm not making any promises, but yeah.
Is there not one?
There might be.
I think there's a plugin that lets you
For
do
Jira?
that. Which,
So there's a Jira dev mode plugin,
But
which I
for
haven't
making tickets.
used much. Oh yeah, it's like a mini creation tool. I don't know, I'm not about that. I actually like Jira, but I'm just a weird person.
Like, let's not taint our Figma with Jira.
There is a
gross.
I'm
There
with
is
you,
a
Devin.
there is a Chrome plugin where you can add tickets in Chrome with a little pop-up thing, which feels a bit better, but it doesn't have all the functionality. And our Jira tickets require that we sort of answer questions in the drop downs and all sorts of things. So it doesn't work in that case. But yeah, I mean, maybe we're getting closer to our workflows being a bit more similar, which is nice.
They did massively improve the selection filtering specifically in dev mode, because before, if you were in the inspect panel in the old version, it was so weird. Like, it worked in the inverse to the design mode. So instead of holding command to select the specific element, by default it would select the smallest element, including vector pieces of an icon. And I could see developers going like, oh my God, this is like, I hate this. And also having to like swim around this ambiguous canvas where I'm just furiously like moving around, and they're like, I don't know what to do here. We were using Zeppelin initially, because Zeppelin kind of fixed some of those things. And I actually recently, I'm piloting not using Zeppelin, mainly because at some point Zeppelin decided that to see red lines you needed a seat, and suddenly Zeppelin was really expensive. So for now, I don't know what's going to happen. I might have to reconsider my strategy, but for now, like, by using Figma like this, and people seem happy, like, we've saved a lot of money a year. And the devs actually seem comfortable now. We figured out a system where each ticket has a file, and in that, or each Jira ticket has a file, and in that file is like a specification page, and there's extra pages if they want to see more. And the dev mode, like, they seem to, I haven't talked to many, I talked to one of the leads about it, and he's quite happy with it so far. Really likes the panel on the left that lets you focus on the specific elements, and also be able to see something's ready, so they know, oh, this is the section that I need to pay attention to. Because before, you'd have to manually put in like a checkbox emoji, and you wouldn't know, and of course you forget, and it just didn't have that kind of finality of like, this is actually the thing. I think it's a good step forward, but the only thing that has me a bit nervous is the seat pricing next year. It's what, 25 per seat?
Yeah,
More expensive than Zeppelin. That confused me. I thought they'd be competing with Zeppelin and that, but we'll see. I think they're probably just like doing feelers on it right now.
I think they've sort of, I guess it's a business question, but they got popular because they were good, but they weren't, when they were first competing with Sketch, it wasn't like they were miles and miles and miles ahead of Sketch, right? It was roughly apples and oranges, sort of. Yeah, like you can sort of have someone come into your team, and you guess you don't have to go into Zeppelin anymore. You can just sort of, it's all integrated, and it is somewhat better, but it was free, and that was a big thing, and I worry about, like, there's a new, should I be saying this on a Friends of Figma session? Maybe not. But
does it begin with P?
Yeah.
Penpot.
Is that it? Yeah. There is a free Figma
It's
called
an
Penpot.
open source, like,
Yes,
alternative
I've heard of
that
one.
Yeah. It's not perfect.
It's promising.
Yeah, it's something.
yeah, they're really proud that they've done CSS Grid. They're extremely proud of that right now. They just had like a pen pot fest, and that was like, oh, and they designed tokens integration. So you know that Figma plugin, Token Studio, they've done an integration with Penpot as well. So they're very, yeah, they're definitely like, they're building themselves up. And look, tools come and go. This is just the reality. We've all fallen in love with a tool, and one day it just doesn't become a tool anymore. You know, it's possible that things will change in the future.
Yeah. Has anyone worked with design tokens? Because there was a lot of talk about how they didn't have design tokens in this.
So I did a project where we used Token Studio, and it was so successful. Like, you know, in fairness, that was a focused project, and I worked with one front end on it. And at the start, I was like, listen, like, I want to try this thing out where we use the same JSON file just as an experiment. So we sat down and we worked out what we wanted to call all the tokens. And now, in fairness, it was not as smooth as it is doing it now in Figma, but you assign everything, you know, to a token in the file using the plugin. And then we were just in sync. Like, literally, like, I took an overlay of screenshot of his project over my design screen, and it was like 1-to-1, and it was just like, oh my god, this is beautiful. Like, it's so perfect. And because we're using the same variables, if one of us changed it, we just sent the JSON file to the other person, and it was like, oh yeah, that's fine, it's all updated, no work required. But you can, like, Token Studios it still has some advantages right now. So all the typography right now, you can configure in Token Studio better spacing, weight, and you can have them separated to their own little tokens. So actually what I thought was really cool is we figured out a system with sizing where we had, like, you know, small, medium, large, etc. But that was actually matched for every single property, including border radius and like line height and everything. We used the same 8 pixel grid system. So like, it was like, oh yeah, large 24, that's for everything that's large. And after a while we started to just instinctively know, like, oh yeah, that's large spacing, oh yeah, sure, 24 pixels. Or that's large border radius, oh yeah, 24. So that was fun. But doing that at scale is, oh gosh, I wouldn't want to do it at scale. That was like it was an experiment.
Yeah, it sounds painful.
Sounds like you should come and teach us how to do a few of these things, Jamie, including your files and the way that you set things up for development success. It sounds like you've got lots to share, which is awesome.
I mean, look, I was just fortunate to have, like, to work with a really good front-end developer who was also interested in doing this. I think yeah, it's like it's a teamwork thing. I think it's easy. It was easy because we were in sync and we didn't have to fight about it or anything like that. It was still a bit challenging to set up at the start. I think it's easier now to an extent because you can do it natively. Well, you can do most of it natively in Figma. I think the typography stuff and some of the effects stuff is still manual, but I think at the end of the day, it's just about consistency. So if you can set up a system where you no longer have to, like, manually think about each time what value is that, you just have everything assigned to, like, a token, it suddenly becomes easier, and suddenly it becomes like, oh, we don't have to think about that. But it does introduce constraints, so you have to be conscious of that too. You know, you set the rules and you have to follow the rules. Bit like when you use one of the pre-built design systems, you know, you kind of have to go with what's there. I don't know. You should, like, I don't know, try it out yourself with a project, even if just a small project.
How big's your team right now, Tandy?
We are 5 designers, about 30 devs, although it's a very unique situation in that we don't really have the kind of access to devs that I've had in previous roles. We're not working in almost scrums or squads where it's multidisciplinary. We're almost closer to the CRO team, so conversion rate and product management, as opposed to the devs. That said, we're doing a lot more work up front now in terms of really weird and innovative testing, and then only handing very clear things over to the devs. But it's the first time I've ever worked this way. It's strange to me to not be in contact with devs every day.
I've heard of team structures like this. I think in agencies this can happen a lot. Yeah, I would find that a bit disorientating for sure.
I have been. I've only been there. It's a new role. I've only been there for about a month and a half, and I'm sort of really trying to get my head around the structure of the organization and of the team, because it's just very different to what I've seen before. But it's interesting. And on the plus side, I'm not yet thinking about the ways to hand over designs. I'm thinking about whether the designs work and whether they work for the business, whether they work. I'm working for an e-com company, and it's in multi-markets. So, you know, looking at how things work within different countries, different languages, things like that. So I'm not yet worried about the sort of dev stuff, but I will be soon. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that you don't have to think about like some of the stuff, the mundane kind of Jira stuff, or you know, having to juggle with technical PMs on things like this, right? Which can be challenging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere along the line, the other shoe's going to drop, and now it'll become a thing, but we'll see.
We'd love to, once you are feeling a little bit more chilled in your role, Tandy, we'd love to have you come in and talk rubbish to us.
God,
about
I
whatever
don't know
you
what I
want to
could
talk
teach
about.
anybody on this group, but maybe how to do things the quickest, dirtiest, and laziest way.
No, I think you know the point of the group is not to have the most, although you are incredibly experienced and people would be laughing if they knew your experience, but because you are super experienced. And I said the same to Sam in the chat, that we'd love to have you come on and talk as well, because these groups are not really supposed to be like follow the leader type things. They're supposed to be like just people talking rubbish and bring your thing and share with the thing. So another person I wanted to actually reach out to was, there's a guy called Israel, and he was on this call earlier. I don't think he still is. I think he might have left. He's a guy who was not a product designer last week, and he got interested in UX, wanted to start doing design. He previously done some things with stocks and trades, but that was about it. He'd never done software or anything. And he said, I'm new, I'm keen to start. And I'm on iMessage with him going, go to this link, go watch this guy, go do this, make something, but above all, make stuff, just make and make and make. And I would love to, in a couple of weeks, maybe get him to come in and say, here's what I made, you know, and here's what I learned. Because it's just a really cool perspective, you know, of like, if you're trying to learn in 2023, what does that look like? Because when we were in school, it was like no one's talking about UX, you know, it wasn't a thing that you could study, right? So yeah, as many perspectives as we can. We'd love to get them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome.
That's a good thing. It happens once a month, right, Mitch?
Once a month. It's first Thursdays.
Brilliant.
Which will tickle anyone from Cape Town, because first Thursdays is also a thing in Cape Town. It's like all the bars stay open late, all the arts galleries stay open late, and yeah, it's a very fun time.
Not a coincidence that it's the week after payday.
That's also nice. Like you actually feel like you're a living human being. Yes. That is good. Okay, we're nearly out of time, so I think we'll cap it there, but thank you so much everyone for joining. Thank you, Tandy, for joining. Very cool to see you. Thank you, Sam. I know you've been well. I've been ages since I chatted to you, so it was very cool seeing you. But yeah, I was sort of thinking about, you know, maybe we need to have a real Dublin event somewhere.
Yes.
So
cool.
yeah, we should start thinking about that. Maybe we maybe put some suggestions in general of where might that be in Dublin, or anywhere else. I'm not
Mhm.
driving to Galway or anything. So not Galway, but it's a small country. Like you can do a little bit of a road trip.
Yeah,
Cool.
This was fun. Thanks, Mitch, and thanks. I don't know who else is on the organizing team, but very, very cool.
No, all good. Devin does a lot of things. Quite a few people here have actually already have done talks, and yeah, we'd love to have new folks in. Just talk to them,
Yeah.
us about whatever you want.
Just like a little club, I guess. It's got that kind of vibe to it now, which I really like.
Yeah, it's lovely to see new people, but it's also great. Like, quite a few people that came today have done previous talks, and yeah, it's very cool to see people coming back. And Josh did one. Well, you can go to the YouTube videos and see what we've done previously, and yeah. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna stop the recording and have a great evening, guys.
Yeah, nice guys. Have a great evening.
Awesome.
Nice to meet
Take
you
care.
all.
Catch you again soon. Yeah.
You too as
Take
well.
care. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.